Hi, I'm Carmen of K Car Creates, and if I had $100,000 in my business, I would work on my marketing, my branding, and my website design because
Now on the northwest side near the Old Oaks neighborhood, deputies are working a murder scene at this apartment complex off FM 1960 near Stubner Airline. The sheriff says a woman, possibly in her late 30s, was found dead inside an apartment. She was shot. No suspects in custody right now.
The sound of shattering glass broke the silence of the August night. Moments later, gunshots echoed through the apartment, 5 of them, each one fired at a sleeping mother of 4 who had no chance to defend herself. 2 months later, on Halloween night, a figure wearing a Michael Myers mask would approach another home, entering a garage and firing fatal shots at the same woman's estranged husband. 2 murders, connected by marriage, divorce papers, and 4 children now orphaned. Welcome to Shadows of Crime, where we explore the darkest corners of human behavior. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss an episode. Today, we're examining a case that shocked Houston, Texas. A double homicide that raises disturbing questions about revenge, justice, and what happens when the legal system fails to protect those seeking escape from troubled relationships. Was this a coincidence, a targeted revenge killing, or something far more complex? By the end of this video, you'll have all the facts, but the conclusions, those might haunt you long after this story ends. Carman Denise Peterson wasn't just another statistic. Born October 8, 1986 in Houston's Independence Heights neighborhood, she was a woman determined to build something meaningful. Friends called her Granny, not because she was old, but because of her nurturing spirit that seemed to care for everyone around her. After graduating from Booker T. Washington High School, Carmen pushed herself further, earning an associate's degree from Strayer University while balancing the demands of motherhood. Education wasn't just a personal achievement for Carmen, it was her pathway to providing stability for her children. Professionally, Carmen excelled as a tax expert at Abundant Solutions, where colleagues described her as meticulous and trustworthy. But her entrepreneurial spirit couldn't be contained by a single job. She launched K-Care Creates, an event planning business that showcased her creative talents and attention to detail. Clients raved about her ability to transform ordinary gatherings into memorable celebrations. She could take any space and make it magical, said one friend who had hired Carmen for her daughter's Sweet 16. That was just who she was, someone who created joy wherever she went. But nothing compared to the pride Carmen took in her 4 children, Kenan, Cadence, Carter, and Crown. Her social media accounts were filled with their achievements, family outings, and the everyday moments that make up a loving household. Her sister Kimberly would later tell investigators that those kids were her whole world. Everything she did was for them. The relationship between Carman Peterson and Eric Pait Jr. had started like many others, but over time it deteriorated into something that concerned those closest to them. Court records would later confirm what family members had long suspected. The marriage had become unsustainable for Carmen. By early 2024, the tension between them had reached a breaking point. In March, Carmen took the significant step of filing for divorce from Eric. This wasn't a decision made lightly. As a mother of 4 children they shared together, she understood the profound impact this would have on Kenan, Cadence, Carter, and Crown. She tried everything to make it work, Kimberly White would later tell investigators, but in the end she knew she had to get out for her own safety and for the kids. The divorce filing marked a critical turning point. For Carmen, it represented a chance at a fresh start, an opportunity to rebuild her life on her own terms. For others involved, it may have triggered something darker. What many don't realize about divorce filings is that they often represent the most dangerous period in troubled relationships. Statistics show that the risk of violence increases significantly when one partner attempts to leave. For Carmen, the months between March and August 2024 were filled with both hope and apprehension as she navigated this treacherous transition. But there's another perspective on this relationship that adds crucial context. While Carmen's family saw her divorce filing as necessary, those who knew the couple socially often had a completely different view. "They seemed perfect from the outside," said a neighbor who lived across from their previous shared home. "That's what made it so shocking when we heard about the divorce." This disconnect between public perception and private reality is something investigators would later note as significant. The couple maintained appearances even as their relationship crumbled behind closed doors, a common pattern in cases that eventually turn violent. What's particularly telling is how Carmen's co-workers at Abundant Solutions noticed changes in her behavior months before the divorce filing. She began arriving earlier to work, staying later, and making excuses to avoid going home. These subtle shifts, recognized only in hindsight, painted a picture of a woman quietly planning her escape from a situation she no longer felt safe in. By the time she filed those divorce papers in March 2024, Carmen had already begun creating a new life for herself and her children, one that would be tragically cut short just 5 months later. August 16, 2024, began as an ordinary Friday for most Houston residents. For Carman Peterson, it would be her last. The timeline of that fateful night has been pieced together through police reports, witness statements, and forensic evidence. Carmen had put her children to bed earlier that evening in her apartment on the 4200 block of FM 1960 Road West in northwest Harris County. Neighbors reported nothing unusual. No arguments, no suspicious vehicles, no signs of the horror that would unfold in the pre-dawn hours. Sometime during the night, while Carmen slept, an intruder approached her ground-floor apartment. With calculated precision, they smashed through the patio window, creating an entry point that would later provide investigators with their first clues. The breaking glass apparently didn't wake Carmen or alert any neighbors, a detail that would later raise questions about whether the killer had prior knowledge of her living situation and sleeping habits. What happened next was described by investigators as execution style. The intruder entered Carmen's bedroom and fired multiple shots at her sleeping form. The medical examiner would later confirm she was shot more than 5 times, an excessive amount that spoke to the personal nature of the crime. It wasn't just a killing, Martha Stargill would later tell reporters. It was rage. It was hatred. By morning, Carmen hadn't shown up for her shift at Abundant Solutions. This immediate red flag prompted her sisters, Kimberly White and Martha Stargill, to check on her. What they discovered would haunt them forever.
It's hard.
2 women without a sister and without answers.
We walked in through the front door and
found her like that.
found her dead.
It was heartbreaking and devastating. Like, I never thought that, I would walk in on my sister, just laying in the bed, murdered.
With that many bullet wounds.
It was heartbreaking and devastating, Kimberly recounted, her voice breaking during a later interview. "I never thought I would walk in on my sister murdered with that many bullet holes." The crime scene told a story that contradicted typical home invasions. Despite the broken window suggesting a burglary, nothing of value had been taken from the apartment. No electronics, no jewelry, no cash. Nothing disturbed except for Carmen's life. But there was something else at the scene that investigators haven't publicly disclosed. Something that made detectives exchange knowing glances when they discovered it. A piece of evidence that pointed to someone specific. Someone who knew Carmen intimately. This crucial detail would later connect to another piece of the puzzle, but in those early hours of the investigation, its significance wasn't yet clear. Before we continue with how this investigation unfolded, I want to ask you something important. Have you or someone you know ever felt unsafe in a domestic situation? The comment section below is a place where we can support each other and share resources. If you're finding value in these discussions, please consider subscribing to Shadows of Crime and hitting that notification bell so we can continue bringing awareness to these critical issues. Now, as the Harris County Sheriff's Office began processing the crime scene, Carmen's family was already forming their own theories about who could have committed such a brutal act, and their suspicions centered on one person in particular. When the Harris County Sheriff's Office arrived at Carmen Peterson's apartment, the scene was both chaotic and chilling. Officers quickly secured the area, marking off the shattered patio window and the bedroom where Carmen's life had been violently taken. Detectives began their work methodically, collecting shell casings, photographing the scene, and searching for any trace evidence that might point to the killer's identity. From the outset, investigators noted the absence of any signs of robbery. Carmen's valuables, her phone, purse, and electronics remained untouched. The only thing disturbed was the window and the space where Carman had slept. This detail immediately shifted the focus of the investigation. The violence, the number of shots fired, and the lack of theft all pointed to a deeply personal motive. As police canvassed the area, Carmen's family was already vocal about their suspicions. Her sisters Kimberly White and Martha Stargill told officers that Carmen had recently filed for divorce from Eric Pait Jr., and that the relationship had been fraught with tension. They emphasized that Carmen had expressed fear in the weeks leading up to her death, and that she believed someone close to her might try to harm her. "It is somebody that had the motive to kill her because they hated her so much," Martha told local reporters, echoing the family's belief that this was not a random act of violence. The family's heartbreak was compounded by the agonizing wait for answers as detectives worked to piece together Carmen's final hours. The community's response was immediate and supportive. Neighbors and friends rallied around Carmen's family, organizing vigils and sharing memories of her kindness and generosity. Many expressed shock that such a brutal crime could happen in their neighborhood, and some began advocating for increased security and awareness about domestic violence. Law enforcement, meanwhile, urged anyone with information to come forward. They stressed that even the smallest detail could be crucial in solving the case. As the investigation continued, the lack of a clear suspect or arrest only deepened the sense of urgency and frustration for those who loved Carmen. In the days that followed, the apartment complex became a focal point for both grief and determination. Carmen's family and the wider community were united in their demand for justice, refusing to let her story fade into silence. The investigation was just beginning, but the impact of Carmen's loss was already being felt far beyond the walls of her home. Just when the investigation into Carman Peterson's murder seemed to be losing momentum, a shocking development occurred that would forever alter the trajectory of the case. On October 31, 2024, Halloween night, Eric Pait Jr., Carmen's estranged husband and a person of interest in her murder, was himself gunned down outside his apartment in southeast Houston.
Investigators are working to figure out who killed a father in his garage on Halloween night.
It happened at a home along Hawks Nest Drive near March Creek Drive. Neighbors report seeing a man wearing what they describe as a Mike Myers Halloween-style mask about the time of the murder. ABC 13's Courtney Carpenter is live to explain the details of this case, including how the murdered man was a person of interest in the murder of his estranged wife just months ago. Courtney?
Yeah, Gina, Eric, this is an interesting case and no doubt a very sad one too, as now there are 3 children with just in the last few months, both of their parents were killed. Now let's start with what happened last night. Deputies were called out to this home on Hawks Nest Drive around 11 o'clock after getting several calls, including one from one of the victim's young daughters about the shooting. Investigators say the man was sitting in his garage with the garage door open when someone shot him several times. Family has identified the man as 38-year-old Eric Pait Jr. Authorities say several neighbors told them they saw a man in a mask walking down the sidewalk before hearing the shots. A neighbor's camera caught this 15 minutes before Precinct 4 deputies arrived.
The circumstances were as chilling as they were symbolic. Eric had been returning home around 11:30 p.m. when, according to witnesses, a figure emerged from between parked cars and approached him. What made this encounter particularly disturbing was the attacker's choice of disguise. A Michael Myers mask, the iconic white face from the Halloween horror film franchise. "I heard the shots and looked out my window," recounted one neighbor who wished to remain anonymous. "All I could see was this person in a Halloween mask standing over someone on the ground. It was like something out of a horror movie, except it was real." The killer fired multiple times at close range, striking Eric repeatedly in the chest and head before fleeing the scene on foot. First responders arrived within minutes, but Eric was pronounced dead at the scene. The brutal efficiency of the killing mirrored Carman's murder in disturbing ways. The symbolism of the Michael Myers mask wasn't lost on investigators or the public. In the Halloween films, Myers is portrayed as a relentless, emotionless killer driven by mysterious motives. The choice of this particular disguise on Halloween night suggested a calculated message, perhaps even a form of vigilante justice or revenge. Houston Police Department detectives quickly connected this case to Carmen's unsolved murder. The timing, less than 3 months after Carmen's death, and the similar execution-style approach raised immediate questions about whether the two killings were linked. "We're exploring all possibilities," stated Detective James Harrington in a press conference the following day. The proximity in time between these two homicides and the relationship between the victims cannot be ignored. Theories began circulating immediately. Some speculated that Eric had enemies who believed he was responsible for Carman's death. Others wondered if both murders were committed by the same person or group, with a vendetta against the couple. The most prevalent theory, however, was that someone close to Carman had taken justice into their own hands after feeling the legal system had failed her. What complicated matters further was evidence recovered at Eric's murder scene. Security camera footage, though grainy, captured the masked figure approaching and fleeing, but not the actual shooting. The killer had seemingly been aware of camera positions, keeping their face obscured even when not wearing the mask. This level of planning suggested premeditation rather than a crime of passion. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that Eric had been receiving threatening text messages in the weeks following Carman's death. These messages, sent from untraceable prepaid phones, contained ominous warnings about karma and justice coming. Eric had not reported these threats to police, a decision that may have cost him his life. The dual murders now presented investigators with a complex web of motives, suspects, and connections that spanned 2 crime scenes and multiple potential perpetrators. What had begun as a tragic domestic homicide had evolved into something far more intricate and unsettling. In the wake of these twin tragedies, the most profound impact fell upon the 4 innocent children caught in the middle: Kenan, Cadence, Carter, and Crown. Within the span of just 3 months, they had lost both parents to violence, leaving them to navigate a world suddenly devoid of the 2 people who should have been their primary sources of love and security. The children, ranging in age from elementary to middle school, were initially taken in by Carman's sisters in the days following her murder. However, as the legal system engaged, a more permanent custody arrangement was established. Eric's mother, Denise Pait, ultimately gained custody of all 4 children, creating a new household that attempted to provide stability amid chaos. "They're resilient, but they're hurting," Denise explained during a brief interview outside the family court. "We're trying to keep their routines as normal as possible, but how do you explain something like this to children? There's no guidebook for this kind of tragedy." Meanwhile, Carmen's sisters Kimberly White and Martha Stargill remained fiercely committed to seeking justice for their sister. Though they respected the custody arrangement, they maintained a close relationship with their nieces and nephews, ensuring the children remained connected to their mother's side of the family. "We're fighting 2 battles," Kimberly explained. "One for justice in the courts, and another to preserve Carman's memory for her children. They deserve to know who their mother really was. Her kindness, her strength, her love for them." The sisters established a foundation in Carmen's name, focused on supporting children who have lost parents to violence. They also became outspoken advocates for domestic violence awareness, frequently speaking at community events and working with local shelters. What few outside the family knew was the heartbreaking reality of how the children were processing their losses. During a private therapy session, Crown, the youngest, had drawn a picture of his family with both parents watching from clouds above. When asked about the drawing, he explained with the devastating clarity that only children possess. "Mommy and Daddy are angels now, but they still fight sometimes." That's why they can't be angels together. This innocent observation revealed the profound understanding children often have, even when adults try to shield them from harsh realities. The therapist working with the children noted that each child was processing the trauma differently, some through silence, others through questions, and some through art and storytelling. For the extended family, supporting these 4 children became the central mission that transcended even their quest for justice. They understood that regardless of who had committed these crimes, the true victims were these 4 young lives forever altered by violence they couldn't comprehend and shouldn't have had to witness. As of late 2024, both the murders of Carman Peterson and Eric Pait Jr. remain officially unsolved, casting a long shadow over their family and the Houston community. The Harris County Sheriff's Office and Houston Police Department continue to investigate, but progress has been slow and frustrating for those desperate for answers. In Carmen's case, detectives have followed up on leads related to her recent divorce filing and the tensions with Eric. While Eric was considered a person of interest, no charges were ever filed against him before his own death. The lack of forced entry beyond the broken patio window, the targeted nature of the attack, and the absence of theft all pointed to someone with a personal vendetta. Yet, despite interviews and forensic analysis, no suspect has been publicly identified. Eric's murder, coming just months after Carmen's, immediately raised suspicions of a connection. The Halloween night shooting, the Michael Myers mask, and the execution-style killing all suggested a calculated act, possibly revenge. Investigators have explored the possibility that someone close to Carmen, or even a vigilante, sought to deliver their own form of justice. However, the evidence remains circumstantial. The killer's careful avoidance of security cameras and use of an untraceable disguise have left police with few concrete leads. Authorities have not officially linked the 2 cases, citing a lack of direct forensic evidence, tying the same perpetrator to both scenes. While the timing and relationships involved make the connection seem likely to many, law enforcement must adhere to strict standards before making such a declaration. Publicly, they continue to treat the murders as separate investigations, though behind the scenes, detectives from both departments are reportedly sharing information and comparing notes. What drives someone to commit such calculated acts of violence? Forensic psychologists consulted by local media have speculated that the killer in both cases may have been motivated by a complex mix of rage, betrayal, and a desire for control. In Carman's murder, the excessive number of gunshots and the intimate setting suggest deep-seated anger, possibly from someone who felt abandoned or wronged. In Eric's case, the theatrical use of the Michael Myers mask and the timing on Halloween point to a killer who wanted to send a message, perhaps relishing the symbolism and the fear it would generate. This psychological profile raises chilling questions. Was the killer seeking justice, revenge, or simply closure? Or was it about power, about making sure the last word and the last act belonged to them? As the investigations continue, these unanswered questions haunt not just the detectives, but everyone touched by this tragic story. The heartbreaking story of Carman Peterson and Eric Pait Jr. is a stark reminder of the warning signs that can precede domestic violence. Subtle changes like increased isolation, sudden mood swings, or a partner's controlling behavior are often overlooked until it's too late. Carmen's co-workers noticed she was staying late at work and avoiding home. Small signals that, in hindsight, spoke volumes about her fear and desperation. This tragedy also highlights the critical role of community vigilance. Friends, family, and neighbors are often the first to notice when something isn't right. Speaking up, checking in, and offering support can make a life-saving difference. In Carman's case, her sister's quick response brought attention to her absence, but earlier intervention might have changed the outcome. Security measures, such as reinforced doors and windows, security cameras, and well-lit entryways, can deter would-be intruders and provide crucial evidence if a crime does occur. While no system is foolproof, these steps can buy precious time and peace of mind for those in vulnerable situations. Perhaps most importantly, This case underscores the need for communities to take threats and concerns seriously. When someone expresses fear for their safety, believing them and offering concrete support can save lives. I'd like to ask you, our Shadows of Crime community, what theories do you have about these connected cases? Do you think justice was served, or is there more to this story than we know? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to join our growing community of critical thinkers exploring the shadows of human behavior. The murders of Carman Peterson and Eric Pait Jr. leave us with more questions than answers about justice, karma, and whether true closure is ever possible for those left behind. The search for the truth continues, with investigators, family, and community members refusing to let these cases fade into silence. At its core, this story is a call to action, to protect the vulnerable, to recognize the signs of danger, and to stand together against cycles of violence. Justice isn't always swift, and karma doesn't always come in ways we expect, but our collective vigilance and compassion can make a difference. Thank you for joining us on this difficult journey. Remember, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, resources and support are available. Stay safe, stay aware, and keep looking out for one another. This is Shadows of Crime, where every story matters, and every voice can help bring justice a little closer.